have some great advice for you.
Oh, do tell.
Okay. Have you ever been given advice that you didn't ask for?
No.
Never happened.
Yes. Yes.
Never happens.
Yeah, it happens a lot. Um, a lot. And I think we must ask ourselves, what does this person really know and understand about me?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Because I would challenge anybody like to think about things that way. If you're getting advice from somebody,
Yes.
do they have they really taken the time to listen and understand me enough to be able to give this advice? Because it's very rare that any topic is methodical and only has one solution. Basically, never. So if that's the case, then let's operate under that assumption. There are many different ways that one could go about the world. And I would say to our young professionals on the line and to those who are also seasoned, approach advice with caution and skepticism, unless the person really has taken the time to be curious and understand.
So are you really able to do that in the moment, Ryan? So someone has given you some unsolicited advice. Your brain really goes to, what does this person know? Like,
Well, there's the conversation, and then there's
okay.
what happens after, the
Okay.
potential action on that. And I think separating those is pretty important.
Okay. So
I
what do
think
you do in the conversation? So what is your brain telling you?
to be nice always.
Oh, that's
I
good.
know.
That's
And I'm trying to think back to early career, and that is engaging and listening. But I think it's asking, it's kind of it sounds bad to say like turning the conversation around, but asking kind of, well, what do you mean by that? Or help me understand a little bit more. Or like, yeah, just and being appreciative too, because I think like really, really good people give unsolicited advice or advice that may not be great advice. I think a lot of times it's good intentions. And so I do find myself reminding myself that, hey, this person is coming here with good intentions. And I certainly have been guilty of it, like being in a room with people that are probably smarter than me on a particular topic, and then I weigh in and it's like, maybe after the conversation realize maybe I didn't need to weigh in on that.
yeah, that's really interesting.
How about you? Like, you're an expert truly in a lot of different areas, and you're out and about and have a large network of folks that you interact with that are seasoned professionals, and those are typically the folks that like to give all kinds of advice. Um, what are you thinking about when you receive advice that maybe you're not interested in hearing?
Well, I have to tell you that my immediate reaction, it's why I find your question and your framing so interesting, because as a perfectionist, when someone gives me advice, I immediately think I suck at life, and there's a reason why I suck at life. And how am I going to immediately, if not sooner, do 15 things to make sure I never hear this again? Which is, I love your question because I wish I had asked it sometimes. Now, I have to say, a lot of times this has helped me get better. And there are times where I have way overcorrected or way over worried or given myself a lot of anxiety because I heard something that I probably could have taken a kernel of, or maybe taken none of, or taken some of. And my reaction is typically an outsized, let me take 30% more than what they just said.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, which is not great.
No, I don't know if that's healthy, but I also don't want to give you advice.
Well, hey, listen, it's so I wrote something recently about the feedback I give my daughter, and I think I've said many times on this show already that I'm very good at giving advice that I don't take. That is definitely true with my daughter. And the questions I ask her when she feels like she hasn't performed well are around, you know, what could you have controlled? What could you have prepared for? And then how do we let things go? And I think that question, that set of questions, that set of feedback is very appropriate when we're talking about this. But I love your framing. I'm going to try that next time.
Give it a whirl.
I like that. Okay, so let's think about this. So let's say you've gotten some unsolicited advice, and there's something there. You've reflected, you've asked the Ryan question instead of the Tansley question, and you decide there's something to be done. Now what?
I say this a lot on the show, but I think it just kind of depends. So let's say, yeah, there's you see that there's validity in that advice. Again, I think there's the follow-up questions that you can ask to that person. If you see validity, then maybe they are an expert in someone that you would trust. And asking if it's okay to follow up, if it's somebody you know well enough. Hopefully, if they're just randomly giving you advice, maybe you at least have their email address or LinkedIn profile, if not cell phone. And I think it also like anything else, I find it interesting because like we go to a lot of times we go to college or take or go a further path in education, which really in done well, secondary education is supposed to help us think differently. And as part of that process, it's not just operating from one piece of advice, but going out and doing research, maybe trying to find additional points that would argue against or for or different data points. And so if you feel like somebody's giving you good advice, I would say have that be the place where you start thinking differently, but not necessarily taking that verbatim. I mean, if it's an easier, lower thing, like, try to like, I'm thinking about like fashion or something. It's like, hey, always be really careful, you know, mixing dark blue with black, like that kind of thing. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I want to make sure I'm not always doing that thing. But if it's something larger, like, yeah, I really think it's worth going and getting a master's degree, then yes, I would say talk to a lot more people, get a lot more uh, get a lot more data.
I absolutely love that you just used dark blue and black as the example because that is exceptional advice. Exceptional advice that you should give to everyone.
When does it work? You need some contrast though, right? Like,
Yeah, you can't because no navy and black, no navy and black, but bright blue and black, I'm good with.
what's crazy is like all the AI tools giving just so much advice that you just it'll freak you out. Have
Oh,
you had any moments of like you just like Copilot or Chat GPT and all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is really bad.
yes. Well, and I've had an interesting conversation with some of our internal team about having the persona of AI and a suggestion about asking the AI to be a therapist persona, which I have many, many questions about. This is probably its own episode.
It certainly is.
And that is very dangerous, I think. And my colleagues think, some of them think it is not dangerous at all. So again, get other opinions.
I'm on the not that dangerous,
Oh,
but like knowing that it's still just generative AI.
our brains are not sophisticated enough to understand that. Our brains feel something. If you're getting a dopa hit,
Use
something
caution.
if you're getting a dopa hit, okay, so I'm curious, as someone who has some skepticism about advice, when do you give advice? So I'm a young professional. I have many opinions. I'm in a situation where I want to give advice. What do I do?
Yeah, I would. So this happens to align really well with a book that I'm reading called Super Communicators right now.
Yes,
Have you read this?
I
Yeah.
have.
Uh, so I think one of the big lessons out of it, and it's many lessons. It's consistent with a lot of the advice that people give, which is like taking a moment to understand what the person really wants from you and whether or not they want advice or do they just want empathy or is this like a constructive type conversation? And there are ways I think to do that um, hopefully help the person feel like you're not processing them through some kind of a, scheduled advice or like a specific method. People don't want to feel like they're being put through the method of things. But I think something as simple as like, how can I support you with this? And often people will just say, I just want to vent, like I don't, because giving the advice in a moment where we've all been there, where we're just sad or mad or frustrated, like, and the last thing you want to hear is advice. That's not helpful, right? So I think clarifying is the most important thing you can do. If you're having an interaction or a dialogue with someone who is sharing something with you and being vulnerable, that's a moment to kind of understand, hey, where is it that you can support? I think you do a really good job of that. Now, where I think things become interesting is if you have a close someone who you're close with who you feel like maybe isn't doing something that's the best for them or for their department or for their team and you really want to approach them with some advice unsolicited but with the best of intentions. I think that's where things get a lot more interesting. So what
Well,
would you say in that
well,
situation? Sorry.
yeah, as leaders, we have a responsibility at times to give
Yeah,
unsolicited.
absolutely.
We are intended to be observing patterns and seeing things. And I still believe that those conversations are best started with questions. In this last situation, what did you observe? In this specific instance, what do you think went well? Where do you think we skinned our knees? Anytime you have an opportunity to ask a question instead of make a statement, I do think considering that is important.
So I'm curious about since you said you read Super Communicators, I think I'm two-thirds of the way through it. The intersection of emotion with kind of the functional advice. So if for let's say I'm obviously running an HR team here, and maybe there's an area that kind of needs some fine tuning. Um, which there's not, by the way. They're incredible people and we're basically perfect.
Right.
Uh, but you're approaching a colleague with some advice. Now you have the CEO title, but this is going back to, or maybe a collaborative partnership that you might have. Do you use things like how do you feel about how this is going? Do you use phrases like that when you're approaching with curiosity, or where do emotions come in?
Oh, that's such a good question. For myself, in terms of regulation, if I'm having a strong emotion, I'm not going to go into that conversation in that moment, right? If I'm having a strong reaction to something these days, I want to sit with that for a minute, which is, I want you to know, so counter to every bone in my body. I don't like to sit with things. I don't like to wait for anything. I very much want to move through things and get us moving forward. And emotions are telling us something. And what I have learned in my maturity is it's okay to sit with something almost always.
Yeah.
Time is generally on our side. And I have very rarely regretted that. And I have very frequently regretted charging ahead when I have a strong emotion about something.
All right, folks, that's it. I think that's the best piece of advice on this podcast ever. And I have to say, this is an area that I've been working on for the past few years because I'm a pretty like responsive, reactive. If you're familiar with Big Five, like I'm all the way on the reactive scale. I'd like to take it again because I've really been working on it. Um, and I think that's the best. The way you articulated it is perfect. More often when I've waited, I've not regretted it, but when I've reacted, I've had to apologize or clean it up, or I've spent a lot of nights or weeks regretting saying something. But I think, yeah, that's great advice.
Okay, I have one more question because this I think is dangerous. If you are a person, and I have been this person, who is getting regular, unsolicited, unhelpful advice, what do you do?
I I know this is like I'm an
Yeah,
optimist. I would say first just assume best of
yeah,
intentions.
yeah.
I really do think human beings just care about others and want to see them be successful. That I think is a great place to start.
Yeah. Yes.
You could also, something to think about, do a podcast about advice and make sure people really understand when it makes good sense to give unsolicited advice to others.
So there's never a thing you would have someone do? You would just
I
take
guess I
it?
haven't really thought about that. Yeah, this is a fascinating topic for me too. I hadn't processed it very much other than this podcast. So this is kind of fun. I'm gonna really think about it now. But I don't have like, I mean, I certainly wouldn't advise you to shut people down. Like, how do you end a conversation with somebody who's not giving you good advice? Like, I don't, I mean, you can do a diversion like we do with our kids. Like we're like, oh, hey, I've got to go do this thing, or like, how is this? You could turn it around and be like, how is everything going at your shop? Or, exciting plans for vacation, or, how are you feeling about this topic? I think that would be reasonable.
Mhm.
What about, I mean, are you thinking of some strategy here that you'd like to share?
I can't say I have a strategy. This happens to me a lot, and I often don't realize it till someone else observes it with me. So this is
Mm,
something I'm often not cognizant of until
yeah.
someone else observes. And I do think sometimes I have done things like upon the third or fifth or 50th set of advice, say, hey, you remember that thing you said? This is what I've done. Like sometimes I think the loop gets closed, maybe, although this could encourage it, but I have tried to say, hey, this is the thing I've done based on what you shared. That probably doesn't shut it down though.
Yeah, I think, well, you're reminding me of, once again, in that book, Super Communicators, it talks about looping back.
Yes.
And I love that, by the way. And
Me
I
too.
realize that many really good super communicator people, really good communicators do that already, which I think is most of the book. It's like these are skills that people that I have a lot of respect for already kind of deploy, maybe subconsciously. But looping back, like almost repeating back. So you're saying you think it'd be a good idea to do this, gives you a moment to think about either an exit strategy or follow-up questions or whatever that might look like, whatever your next steps are going to be.
Yes, and what you're saying is actually better than what I was saying, which is
No way.
in the moment, repeating back what I heard you say is
Yeah.
because for an empathic person, and this will be a signal, I think, of intent, which is where you started, there will be a reaction that's going to tell you something about intent, which I think is critical, especially if it was a weird piece of
Oh,
advice,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, if it was weird and you're repeating it back, what I heard you say is if
Yeah.
that was a little head tipping, the response to that will say everything.
Yeah. And I think like anytime somebody says something that's, whether it's advice or something that makes you feel kind of emotional and you need that space, that looping thing is like the absolute best.
Yes.
And you can say it in a way like there's 50 different ways to say it
Yes.
by
I also
asking for,
think one of the very best tools in your toolkit is when all else fails, That's interesting.
I'm laughing in part because it took me, I don't know, 6 months to a year to realize that that was a tactic that you were deploying when I would say something really that didn't make much sense, or there was confusion, or, you heard something that was like, oh my God, what the hell is wrong with that person? Tansley would just say, oh, that's interesting. So now it's a tell and it's out there for public. So you're going to have to think of another one or not and just be unapologetic about it.
I think I'm unapologetic about that one. I got to tell you.
I
Yeah.
think there are moments where being unapologetic is very good, and that's
I
part.
love that. I don't practice it often. I'm going to try it now.
Sounds good. That's good advice.
I like it.
Me
Okay.
too.
I'm not sure what the answer is, except I do think, as with most things, beginning with curiosity will help a lot.
Yes, and assume best of intentions.
Yes,
I
yes.
know it's hard, but
I
I
love
want
that.
to believe that.
I do too. All right.
Awesome.
High five to you.